also remind us that there's a really tight connection between what we can imagine and virtual reality. Really, our imagination is the bound of what we can create. And I think that this is something that I really want you to keep in mind throughout what we're talking about today, and even after today as well.
It's out today.
So today I'll be talking to you again about what I've done with young creators, what I've learned from working in VR with students. I'll also tell you my thoughts on virtual reality's education space and what to expect in the future. And then at the end we'll have a Q&A. I really hope that during that you ask me anything. Even if there's stuff that I don't talk about in these slides, just feel free to ask lots of stuff. I'm really excited about people getting into virtual reality, so I hope that you feel comfortable just asking anything that you're curious about. I want to start by telling you how I plunged into virtual reality. It really started with Google Cardboard. Once I saw that, I realized that VR would be available for the masses, and I did as much as I could to really understand the space. And I capped off that experience by teaching a one-week class at my old high school on virtual reality development. One of my Stanford professors really liked that, so he hired me and a few friends to teach a VR class at Stanford that's also taught at a bunch of other universities. And over the past year, I've also been working with Rabbit Hole VR, which is Stanford's VR and AR group that's focused on getting people into the space. The reason why I'm telling you about these things is because from working by teaching a lot of people about how to build for VR, I've seen a lot of interesting design-related things that I want to share with you. And also, if any of you are excited about getting into VR and AR, I'd be incredibly happy to help. That's what we do at Rabbit Hole. Also, in case any of you are looking for some design work, our logo really needs some improvement. So definitely let me know if you want to come by and do some work with us. We'll exchange it for tons of VR and AR demos. But let's actually jump into what I'm going to be talking about, which is my learnings from working with young creators. When I went back to my high school, I was really excited to get them building any worlds that they could imagine. But right before I talk about that, I actually want to do a quick experiment with all of you. Some of you actually may have seen this before. If you have, just play along. The experiment's pretty simple. I'm going to give you 30 seconds to think about as many use cases as you can for a paperclip. Again, 30 seconds, starting now. Think about all of the ways that you could use a paperclip. Count with your fingers if you have to. Go for as many as you can. 15 seconds left. 5 seconds. And time. Now, I'm not going to put anybody on the spot and ask you to share how many you could come up with, but what I do want to share with all of you is what happened when this experiment was done on a really widespread scale. It was done with students when they were in kindergarten, and then again throughout all of their lives. When they were in kindergarten, it was found that they could come up with over 200 use cases if given an infinite amount of time. Now, of course, you guys didn't have an infinite amount of time, so you probably didn't come up with 200 or anywhere near that. But what's interesting is that as they got older, when they were given the same test, they couldn't come up with as many uses. By the time they were in middle and high school, it was about 100 or 150. They got to college, it was 50. By the time they were full-grown adults, they struggled to just come up with 20. I actually tested this on my mom, and she came up with 3, I think was the number. So it's something that becomes really tough as we get older, to really use our imagination and think outside of the box. And that's what got me excited about giving this new cutting-edge technology to the hands of young creators and seeing what they can build with it. And again, the prompt that I gave them was simple, just to build whatever they could imagine. And I want to share just 2 examples of what they came up with. One of my students was named Spencer. He's really excited about adventure games and wanted to create this environment that was epic in his sense of the term. So he created this like snow-capped hill environment. You see that there's a moat around it, and there's also a bridge that you would have to walk on to get to that hill. And then there was another student, Jasmine, who was more excited about creating this sort of nighttime environment and world. She created this mountainous scene with some weeping willows, and also like there's a swamp type thing in the middle of it. Also, I got really close to all of these students. We went to the same high school after all, so it became Snapchat friends with a lot of them. And when I told them that I was going to be sharing some of the stuff that they made, they were really excited and she wanted to show her face to all of you. So it's really exciting to think about when we give kids access to this type of stuff, what can they come up with? Because they really have creative and imaginative minds. And so I want you to think about, with all of the things that you hear about today and also in the future, how much of an impact that could have if you put it in the hands of a young kid and a young creator and see what they can do with it. But I also want to tell you about some of the learnings that I got from working with these kids. And really I had a few questions that were in my mind that I want to share the answers with you. The first was about what are really like the lowest hanging fruits that we can focus on to build engaging VR experiences. That was important to the students because I only had a certain amount of time with them, but it's also important to all of us because it really lets us know where to focus when we're building virtual reality. And what I found that it's really about having very thematic models and music. If you come up with stuff that at least looks decent visually and add some sound that works with the theme, a lot of users will be willing to buy into the experience. It doesn't need to be incredibly high-end. If you overload them with something visually and also their sense of sound, they will start to buy in and engage with your experience. On the other side, though, a big pain point is that if you decide to go much deeper than that, if you want to, maybe a fly just got zapped or something, that sucks. But if you want to build something that is really high-end and realistic, that's very hard to do. The reason for that is that every day we wake up and we see the real world. And when something's just a little bit off in virtual reality, we'll notice that too. So when you're building or designing for VR, keep in mind that you can create very compelling and engaging low-end experiences very easily. But if you try to move to something that's higher end, there's a lot of complications that come with it. Lastly, as a blanket question, what was surprising when working with these young creators? One of the first things was that VR naturally invites a lot of diversity. There's space for all sorts of designers, engineers, creative directors, and so much more. Another thing is that sharing what we create and what we're exploring in virtual reality feels really good. I expected that the students were going to have smiles on their faces when they put on their headsets and walked around in their worlds, and that happened. But what surprised me is that they were also incredibly excited to share those worlds with their friends, their parents, and other people. So if we can design with collaboration and sharing in mind, that's really powerful. The last thing that I want to point out before I move on is that there's a lot of things that we don't know about virtual reality. And honestly, this is kind of surprising. People have been talking about VR for the last about year and a half or so, but it's actually been around since around the 1960s. It's something that researchers have been working a lot on, but it hasn't been consumerized until now. So when you're designing or building for VR, bear in mind that there's probably tons of research papers that are working on the thing that you are trying to do. Whenever you hear somebody saying that they're doing something for the first time or the only time, it's probably BS, and they probably haven't done all of the reading that they can, because there's tons of stuff out there. We just don't know about what works best because we haven't been able to get it in the hands of tons of users yet. Before I move on, I just want to mention that if you're interested in any of the stuff that I'm talking about, world building and young creators, definitely talk to me. The next steps that I'm working on with this project is actually partnering with the Tech Museum in San Jose to let kids keep doing this regularly. And we're really excited about also trying to make an exhibit out of this. So I'm really open to collaboration, and they are too. So definitely let me know if you're interested. What I want to close with is talking about virtual reality's education space. There's a lot going on here in terms of corporate and executive education, but what's most exciting to me is K-12 education and what's going on in classrooms. And what we see a lot of is people building very immersive content, trying to get students to go into the lessons that they're having in the classroom. What you see here is students going on field trips with Google Cardboard through the Google Expeditions program. And that's exciting stuff. Making content more immersive is really awesome. Students are going to appreciate that, and they already are. But I also have a bold hypothesis that I want to share with all of you. And that's that some of the best educational VR experiences might not come from things that are designed to be used for education in VR. They actually might come in disguise as things that we designed and ended up having some very strong educational purpose to them. Now this might sound a little bit crazy. You might think, what the heck is this guy talking about? Of course that's not right. Like, we need to get the design right. It needs to all be intentional. We need to design for an explicit purpose. But bear with me. If we look at the reason to believe that some really interesting educational VR might come from unlikely places. And what I like to think about are my favorite edtech tools. There's 3 of them: Khan Academy, Minecraft, and Google. Now, of these 3, there's only one that's explicitly educational. That's Khan Academy. The other 2 weren't designed with education in mind at all, but they ended up being incredibly valuable educational tools. So what unites Minecraft and Google, and how are they also related to VR? Well, my hypothesis is that they came at the point of a very important paradigm shift. Minecraft was on the rise when people were getting into tinkering and making as kids, when kids really wanted to express themselves digitally. Minecraft was very well timed for that. Google, in terms of the paradigm shift there, it's pretty obvious. It's this thing called the internet. It came around, tons of information was available to everybody, and Google came at the right time and made it available for everybody to access and sift through all of that information. My argument is that virtual reality has the potential to be a similar shift in paradigm. 5, 10, or maybe even 2 years from now, it might change the way that we interact with each other and as a society. And because of that, there's a very strong likelihood that we might be experimenting with something, imagining something for a certain purpose, and find that it actually ends up having a lot of use cases that we didn't even imagine. As one last point on this, I want to bring up the example of alt space VR. This really strongly showcases what I'm talking about. For those of you who haven't heard, alt space created this way for any of us to go into a virtual world, share that space with anyone else around the world, and also converse with them. It wasn't designed for education, but recently they started creating these immersive environments where you can go in, you can speak Spanish with other people, you can share your interests, you can talk about what you're working on. That has a lot of educational value, but it wasn't even designed for that. So bear in mind to use your imagination, experiment wildly, and you don't even know how it might end up. You could accidentally stumble into something that's incredibly interesting. To close, I want to revisit this quote that I opened with, but you'll see that the image is a little bit different. Instead of a paper airplane, now there's a brick and a shadow of a tank. And I bring this up because our imagination is incredibly important to virtual reality. We get to decide whether we're going to make virtual reality something that's accessible to everybody, or if it's something that's limiting and just designed for a few. Are we going to take people to places that make them feel really good and empower them, or are we going to take them to very negative places? That's all up to us, and I hope that you guys decide to use your imagination for good. If you're interested in doing that, definitely come talk to me, because I would like to get to know you and what you're excited about, and together we can take our first steps into our imagination. Thank you.
All right, we have time for 1 or 2 questions of Q&A.
So thank you for your presentation, and I know that you actually focus on to use virtual reality for young creators, but I also want to know your idea about how we can use virtual reality to awake adults.
How was that?
Like adults,
adults.
How to awake, because like you said, when you grow up, your imagination kind of go lower. So how can we use virtual reality to try to awake these kind of imagination even when we grow up?
I think one of the best things to do is to just really try a lot of different types of virtual realities. See what other people are imagining, and you'll probably find that it sparks some of your own imagination and makes you want to build some of your own things.
All right, well, thank you so much.